I never thought I'd lose my virginity in a penthouse suite overlooking Central Park, with champagne bubbles fizzing in my veins and a man worth $3 billion whispering my name like a prayer. But here's the thing nobody tells you about fairy tales. They don't prepare you for what happens when the clock strikes midnight and the magic doesn't disappear. My name is Emma Richardson, I'm 23 years old, and this is the story of how one night changed everything I thought I knew about love, power, and myself. But before I tell you what happened that night, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. And if you love dramatic real-life stories like this one, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. 3 months ago, I was serving overpriced cocktails at Eclipse, Manhattan's most exclusive rooftop bar. You know the kind of place where a martini costs $45 and the clientele wear watches that cost more than my yearly rent. I was working double shifts, trying to save enough money to finish my art history degree at NYU, while living in a shoebox apartment in Queens with 2 roommates and a radiator that only worked when it felt like it. That's where I met him. It was a Thursday night in late September, unseasonably warm, with that golden light that makes New York City look like it's been dipped in honey. I was carrying a tray of champagne flutes when I literally bumped into him. My entire tray tilting dangerously before his hand shot out and steadied it with reflexes that seemed almost superhuman. "Careful there," he said, and when I looked up I forgot how to breathe. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair that was perfectly styled in that effortless way that probably took 30 minutes and a very expensive barber. His suit was charcoal gray, tailored so precisely it looked like it had been painted onto his body. But it was his eyes that got me, steel blue, intense, with a hint of amusement that suggested he was constantly entertained by some private joke the rest of the world wasn't in on. "I'm so sorry, sir," I stammered, very aware that my manager was probably watching and that Eclipse had a strict one-strike-and-you're-out policy when it came to almost dumping champagne on the clientele. "Don't be." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face from intimidating to devastating. "I'm Sebastian Drake." I should have recognized the name immediately. Sebastian Drake, founder and CEO of Drake Technologies, the company that had revolutionized cloud computing and made him a billionaire by age 30. He'd been on the cover of Forbes, Time, and probably every business magazine in existence. He was known for being brilliant, ruthless in business, and intensely private about his personal life. And he was looking at me like I was the only person in a room full of Manhattan's elite. "Emma," I managed. "I'm Emma. Emma." He said my name like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. "Are you working all night?" My heart was hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Until midnight." What a coincidence. "I'll be here until midnight, too." He wasn't kidding. For the next 4 hours, every time I glanced across the bar, Sebastian was watching me. Not in a creepy way. In a way that made me feel like I was the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. He nursed a single glass of scotch, turned down 3 different women who tried to approach him, and at 11:45, when I was cashing out my tips, he appeared beside me. "Your shift's almost over. How did you?" I asked. He shrugged, unapologetic. "Have a drink with me, Emma." Just one. Every rational bone in my body screamed that this was a terrible idea. Men like Sebastian Drake didn't just happen to notice waitresses. Men like him dated supermodels and heiresses, and women who summered in the Hamptons and wintered in Aspen. But there was something in his eyes, a loneliness that mirrored my own, a hunger for something real in a city built on pretense. "One drink," I heard myself say. We went to a quiet corner booth, away from the crowd. He ordered another scotch. I got a glass of rose that probably cost more than my cell phone bill. "Tell me something real about yourself," he said, leaning back against the leather seat. Not the polite small talk version. Something true. I took a sip of wine, feeling the courage it gave me. "I'm terrified I'm wasting my life. I'm studying art history because I love it, but everyone keeps asking me what I'm going to do with that degree, and honestly, I have no idea. I just know that when I stand in front of a Caravaggio or a Rothko, I feel something I can't explain. Like I'm touching something eternal. Does that sound crazy?" "No." His voice was quiet, serious. "It sounds like the sanest thing I've heard in months. Do you know what it's like to build a billion-dollar company and still feel like something's missing? To have everything money can buy and realize that's not the point at all." We talked for 2 hours. About art and ambition, about the loneliness of being surrounded by people who want something from you, about growing up hungry for something you can't name. He told me about his childhood in Detroit, about a single mother who worked 3 jobs, about teaching himself to code in a public library. I told him about my small town in Ohio, about parents who thought art school was a waste of money, about feeling like I was always trying to prove I deserved to take up space. When the bar finally closed at 2 a.m., he stood up and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I want to see you again, Emma. Not here. Somewhere we can actually talk without interruption. Like dinner?" My voice sounded small. "Like breakfast. Tomorrow. At my place." He pulled out a card with just his name and a phone number embossed in silver. "I'll send a car for you at 9. If you want to come." I should have said no. Every true crime podcast I'd ever listened to screamed at me that going to a strange man's apartment, billionaire or not, was asking for trouble. But something about Sebastian felt different. Maybe it was the way he listened when I talked, really listened, like my words mattered. Maybe it was the way his confidence seemed to waver when he looked at me, like I had some power over him he couldn't control. Or maybe I was just a 23-year-old virgin who'd spent her whole life being careful, being responsible, being the good girl, and I was tired of it. The car that picked me up the next morning was a black Mercedes with leather seats softer than my bed. The driver was professional, silent, and he took me to a building on 5th Avenue with a doorman who looked like he could double as Secret Service. The elevator required a key card and opened directly into Sebastian's penthouse. The apartment was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, modern art on the walls that I recognized from auction catalogs, furniture that managed to be both minimalist and incredibly comfortable. But what struck me most was how empty it felt. Like a showroom. Like nobody actually lived there. Sebastian emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 plates of pancakes and fresh strawberries. He was wearing jeans and a simple white t-shirt, and somehow he looked even better than he had in the suit. "I wasn't sure if you liked pancakes," he said, and there was something vulnerable in his voice. "I can make something else. Pancakes are perfect." We ate on his balcony 47 floors above the city, and I felt like I was in a dream. He asked me about my favorite artists, and I found myself explaining the difference between Baroque and Rococo while he watched me with those intense blue eyes, occasionally asking questions that proved he was actually listening. After breakfast, he showed me his private art collection. 3 Basquiats, a Monet, a Warhol, and in his bedroom. I tried not to think too hard about being in his bedroom, a painting I didn't recognize. "That's by an artist named Sarah Chun," he said softly. "She was nobody when I bought it. She's still nobody, according to the art world. But when I look at it, I feel something. Isn't that what matters?" I stared at the painting, an abstract piece in blues and grays that somehow captured the feeling of loneliness in a crowd. "You really get it," I whispered. "So do you." He was standing very close to me now, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy. "Emma, I haven't stopped thinking about you since last night. I know this is crazy. I know we just met. But I need you to understand, this isn't some game to me. You're not some game to me. Then what am I? You're the first real thing I've encountered in 5 years." He kissed me then, and it was nothing like I'd imagined my first kiss would be. It was hungry and desperate and gentle all at once, his hands cradling my face like I was something precious that might break. I kissed him back with all the pent-up longing of 23 years of waiting for something I couldn't name, and finally finding it. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "I need to tell you something," I said, my voice shaking. I haven't. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You're a virgin." I nodded, feeling my cheeks burn. "If that's a problem." "Emma." He tilted my chin up, forcing me to look at him. "That's not a problem. But I need you to be sure. I need you to be absolutely certain this is what you want, because once we do this, I'm not letting you go. Do you understand? I don't do casual. I don't do temporary. If we do this, you're mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have scared me. Instead, it sent a thrill down my spine. "I'm sure." What happened next was both exactly like the romance novels I'd secretly read and nothing like them at all. Sebastian was patient, reverent even, taking his time to make sure I was comfortable, checking in with me constantly. There was pain, yes, a sharp, brief moment of it. But there was also pleasure that built like a wave, cresting into something that made me understand why people wrote songs and poems about this. Afterward, we lay tangled in his sheets, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, and he traced patterns on my bare shoulder. "I'm 32 years old," he said quietly. "I've been with women who were more experienced, more sophisticated. None of them made me feel what I feel right now. Like maybe I've been looking for you my whole life and didn't know it. I turned to face him, studying the vulnerable expression on his face. What happens now? Now! He smiled, that devastating smile that made my heart skip. Now you move in with me, drop out of school, and become my kept woman. I'll dress you in designer clothes and show you off at charity galas. My face must have shown my horror because he laughed, a real laugh that transformed him from intimidating billionaire to someone almost boyish. I'm kidding, Emma. Jesus. What happens now is we figure this out together. You finish your degree. I keep running my company. We have dinner together when we can. We see where this goes. Like normal people. Normal people don't usually start relationships in penthouses. Fair point. He pulled me closer. But we're going to try anyway. The next 3 months were like living in a fever dream. Sebastian kept his word. He didn't try to change me or control me. I kept my apartment in Queens, kept going to class, kept working at Eclipse, though I no longer needed the money. He'd paid off my student loans without asking, depositing the money directly to the university with a simple note. You shouldn't have to worry about debt while studying art. We had dinner together 3 or 4 times a week. He took me to gallery openings, and I introduced him to dive bars in Brooklyn. He taught me about business strategy, and I taught him about Renaissance painting techniques. We were from different worlds, but somehow we created our own world together. The sex got better too. With the nervousness of the first time behind us, I discovered that I was adventurous, passionate, unafraid to ask for what I wanted. Sebastian seemed endlessly fascinated by this, by my transformation from shy virgin to confident lover. But fairy tales don't last forever. The problem started when a photo of us surfaced online, Sebastian and me, leaving a restaurant in Soho, his arm around my waist. Within 24 hours, my Instagram had thousands of new followers, most of them women who wanted to know who I was and what gave me the right to date Sebastian Drake. The gossip blogs were worse, calling me a mystery brunette, and speculating about everything from my background to my motives. Then his mother called. I only heard one side of the conversation, but it was enough. Sebastian's face grew harder with every passing minute, his voice cold in a way I'd never heard before. She's not a distraction, Mother. She's important to me. No, she's not from our world, thank God. This conversation is over. He hung up and turned to me, and I could see he was trying to hide how much it had bothered him. Sebastian, I said carefully. Maybe she's right. Maybe I'm not. Don't. He crossed the room in 3 strides and took my face in his hands. Don't you dare finish that sentence. You are exactly what I need. Exactly who I need. My mother is used to controlling my life, and she's panicking because she can't control this. Can't control you. But what if she's right? What if I'm just a phase? The working class girl you're slumming with before you marry someone appropriate. The hurt in his eyes was instant and devastating. Is that really what you think of me? That I'm the kind of man who would do that to you? To us? I don't know. The words burst out of me, all my insecurities rising to the surface. I don't know because this whole thing is crazy, Sebastian. 3 months ago, I was serving drinks and struggling to pay rent. Now I'm dating a billionaire and his mother hates me, and there are photographers following me to class. This isn't my life. Then whose life is it? The question hung in the air between us. I wish I could tell you that we worked it out that night. That love conquered all and we lived happily ever after. But the truth is messier than that. I left his apartment that evening and didn't return his calls for a week. I needed space to think, to figure out if I was with him because I loved him or because I was seduced by the fantasy of being Cinderella. He respected that space, though he sent flowers every day with notes that ranged from funny to heartbreaking. It was my roommate Katie who finally knocked some sense into me. You're an idiot, she said, sitting on my bed while I cried into my pillow. That man worships you. He doesn't want to change you. He paid off your student loans without making a big deal about it. He listens when you talk about art for 3 hours straight. And you're throwing it away because you're scared. I'm terrified, I admitted. What if I'm not enough for his world? What if his world isn't enough for you? Emma, you've spent your whole life making yourself smaller, trying to fit into spaces that weren't built for you. Maybe this is your chance to take up all the space you deserve. Maybe he's not slumming with you. Maybe you're elevating him. She was right, of course. I called Sebastian that night. He answered on the first ring. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry for running. I'm sorry for doubting you. I'm scared of this of us, but I'm more scared of losing you. Emma Richardson, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Get over here. Now. We have a lot of talking to do. That night, back in his penthouse with the city lights spread out below us, we talked for hours about boundaries and expectations, about his world and mine and the one we wanted to build together. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't some grand romantic gesture. It was real and honest and hard. But it was us. So here's what I learned from giving my billionaire lover my first time. It wasn't really about the sex or the money or the fairy tale romance. It was about finding someone who saw me, really saw me, and chose me anyway. It was about learning that I deserved to be chosen, that taking up space wasn't selfish, that my small-town girl dreams were just as valid as anyone else's. Sebastian and I are still together. We're still figuring it out. His mother still doesn't approve, the gossip blogs still speculate, and I still sometimes wake up in his bed wondering if this is real. But then he rolls over and looks at me with those blue eyes, and I remember. This is my life now. The one I chose. The one I earned. And I wouldn't change a single moment of it.